In 1986, 4 actors shared a couch in a California living room. A dad, a mom, a teenage girl, and an 8-year-old boy. Between them, a 3-foot alien with a taste for cats and a mouth that never stopped. America loved him. 30 million viewers a week. Today, only one of those 4 is still alive. The last to leave us passed just days ago. She called those 4 years on set a technical nightmare. She said there was no joy on that soundstage. A 30-minute episode took 20 to 25 hours to shoot. But she also said something else about that puppet. That little alien made me laugh. That gap between the exhaustion and the laughter followed her for 36 years. Her name was Schedeen. Her story closes this countdown. But first, there was a real person inside that puppet suit, and almost nobody ever talked about him. Number 9. Every time Alf stood up and walked across that living room, that was a real person. His name was Mihaly Mazarosch. The world called him Michu. He stood 2 feet 9 inches tall. Born in Hungary in 1939, Michu trained at a circus school from childhood. In 1973, Ringling Brothers brought him to America. They billed him as the smallest man in the world. 7 years later, he defected from communist Hungary while on tour with the circus. On ALF, he wore the full costume whenever the alien needed to walk or stand. No lines, no on-screen credit. But without Michu, ALF never left that kitchen counter. Off-set, Michael Jackson saw his circus act, and the two became close friends. They appeared together in a Pepsi commercial. And the city where Michu lived, Hawthorne, California, named its shortest street Michu Lane. Mihaly Mazarosch left us in 2016 at the age of 76. He never said a word on camera. The man who played his next-door neighbor said, "Plenty." Number 8. John Lamotta. Worst work I ever did. That is what Lamotta told the reporter about ALF. The year was 2010. No softening, no nostalgia, just a man from Brooklyn saying exactly what he thought. For 4 seasons, he played Trevor Ochmanek, the grumbling neighbor who could never mind his own business. 41 episodes of bickering with his wife and snooping on the Tanners. Before ALF, Lamotta worked with director Sam Furstenberg on action films, Revenge of the Ninja, American Ninja. After the show ended, he picked up guest roles on Frasier ER and Growing Pains. Steady work, small parts, a working actor's life. But here is the detail most fans never knew. John Lamotta was the nephew of Jake LaMotta, the real Raging Bull. The boxer Robert De Niro brought to life in Scorsese's film. John himself was an amateur boxer. John Lamotta left us in 2014 at the age of 75. His wife on the show, the other half of that bickering couple, is next. But Liz Sheridan's real story began long before television, before Seinfeld, before ALF, in a New York City apartment with a young actor nobody knew yet. His name was James Dean. The ALF set was full of trapdoors. The stage sat 4 feet off the ground. One wrong step and an actor could fall straight through the floor. Liz Sheridan learned to watch where she walked. Not everyone on that set handled the pressure as well, but we will come back to that. Before Raquel Ochmanek. Before Jerry Seinfeld's mother. Liz Sheridan was a nightclub dancer in early 1950s New York. That is where she met a young, unknown actor named James Dean. Neither was famous, neither had money. They were 2 people at the very beginning of everything. Sheridan wrote a memoir about that time. She called it Dizzy and Jimmy. Dizzy was her childhood nickname. Her little sister couldn't pronounce Elizabeth. It came out Dizabeth, then just Dizzy. Dean was gone by 1955. He was only 24. Sheridan carried that story quietly for decades. How do you hold on to something like that? On ALF, she played Raquel across 36 episodes. The neighborhood snoop who bickered with Trevor and peeked through every window on the block. Then came the role most of the world remembers, Helen Seinfeld, Jerry's adoring protective mother. Sheridan appeared across all 9 seasons, the only recurring actor besides the 4 leads to do so. When she passed, she was the last surviving member of the group who played parents on Seinfeld. Liz Sheridan passed in her sleep in 2022. She had celebrated her 93rd birthday just 5 days earlier. In ALF's final season, a new face showed up at the Tanner family dinner table. If you watched comedy in the 80s, you already knew him, just not from this show. You knew him as Monroe Ficus on Too Close for Comfort, 6 seasons alongside Ted Knight. You knew him from Hollywood Squares, where he sometimes filled in as host. And if you saw Spaceballs in 1987, you remember Prince Valium, the royal who kept falling asleep through his own wedding. That was Jim J. Bullock. His early credits didn't even spell his name right. They read J.M., no I, because another Jim Bullock already belonged to the Actors Union. In the show's final season, Bullock joined as Neil Tanner, Willie's younger brother. 5 episodes, a late addition to a family the audience had known for years. Now, if you have been keeping count, that is 3 members of this cast already gone. Michu, John, Liz, and we are not even halfway through. Bullock, though, is still here. He took his talent to Broadway, stepping into the role of Wilbur Turnblad in Hairspray in 2007. In 2022, he performed in Kinky Boots at the Hollywood Bowl. He is 71 years old. And he is still on his feet. 3 gone, 1 still standing. But the most important voice on this entire show never appeared on screen. Not once. He spent every single episode 4 feet beneath the stage floor. Picture this. A soundstage in Hollywood, 1987. Upstairs, the Tanner family sits in their living room, cameras rolling, 30 million people about to watch. 4 feet below that floor, a man is crouched in the dark. His left hand works Alf's mouth. His right hand moves Alf's arm. Beside him, a second puppeteer controls the other arm. A third operator runs the face and ears by remote. Above them, trapdoors cut into every part of the set. Reset between takes, sometimes mid-scene. That man is Paul Fusco. He created ALF. He wrote for ALF. He directed, produced, and voiced every word that came out of that puppet's mouth. For 4 seasons, he lived underneath that stage. It started with a joke. Around 1984, Fusco found an alien-looking puppet lying around his house. He used it to pester his family and friends. Then he decided the character deserved its own show. Producer Bernie Brillstein almost passed on the meeting. He had managed Jim Henson for years and didn't think anyone else could do puppetry at that level. One short performance changed his mind. When NBC canceled the series in 1990, Fusco refused to walk away. He produced a TV movie with Martin Sheen in '96. He created Alf's hit talk show for TV Land in 2004. He brought the character back for guest spots on Mr. Robot and Young Sheldon. For 4 years, Paul Fusco sat in the dark underneath that set, giving life to a puppet. But above him, above the trapdoors and the cables, one cast member never needed convincing. A kid who showed up every day and treated Alf like a real friend. That kid is next. Stay with this, because his story is the heart of this countdown. Paul Fusco is 73. The character he created in his living room 4 decades ago still makes people laugh. He was 8 years old when he walked onto the ALF set, Benjamin Gregory Hertzberg. The credits said Benji Gregory. Acting was the family trade. His father was an actor, his uncle was an actor, his sister Rebecca was an actor, his grandmother was his agent. By the time ALF started, the kid had already guest starred on The A-Team, TJ Hooker, and The Twilight Zone. He was in Jumpin' Jack Flash alongside Whoopi Goldberg at age 8. On ALF, he played Brian Tanner for 101 episodes. The youngest member of the family, the one who sat next to that puppet every week and never once flinched. Remember the cast member who never needed convincing? The kid who treated Alf like a real friend. This was him. When the show ended in 1990, Benji kept working. Voice roles in Pound Puppies and Fantastic Max. He played Biff Jr. in the Back to the Future animated series. Then the parts dried up, and Benji Gregory did something no one expected. In 2003, he enlisted in the United States Navy. He trained as an aerographer's mate, that is a military weather specialist. 2 years later, he received an honorable medical discharge. He moved to Arizona. He had a service dog named Hans. He lived far from Hollywood and didn't look back. June 13th, 2024. A bank parking lot in Peoria, Arizona. Benji Gregory and Hans were found together in his car. His sister Rebecca shared what the family believes. He drove there the night before to deposit residual checks and fell asleep. Arizona was deep in a heat wave. Temperatures had topped 110. He was 46. Months later, the Maricopa County Medical Examiner confirmed the cause. Heat exposure in the setting of liver disease. The ruling was accidental. Benji Gregory never chased a comeback. He never sold a tell-all. He served his country, loved his dog, and stepped away on his own terms. He was the kid who believed the puppet was real. And for 101 Monday nights, he made US believe it too. Not every story on this list ends in a headline. Andrea Elson vanished. After ALF ended, she kept showing up. Guest spots on Who's the Boss, Married with Children, Mad About You, Step by Step. A familiar face doing steady work. Then, around 1998, her name stopped appearing in credits. No announcement, no farewell press tour. She simply stopped. But Andrea Elson did not disappear. She chose to walk away. She had met a stage manager named Scott Hopper on the ALF set. They married on May 31st, 1993. Their daughter Claire arrived in 1997. Elson left acting to raise her family. She became a yoga instructor. She lives in Los Angeles. She keeps to herself. Born March 6, 1969, Andrea Elson is 57 today. She is the last surviving member of the main ALF cast. The dad is gone. The mom is gone. The little brother is gone. The voice of ALF is still here. But of the 4 faces that sat on that couch in 1986, only Lynn Tanner remains. Andrea Elson chose silence. The man who played her father on screen chose it too, but his silence came from a very different place. March 1990. The final episode of ALF has just wrapped. The cameras stop, the audience leaves, and Max Wright stands up from the Tanner couch for the last time. He walks to his dressing room, picks up his bags, gets in his car, and drives away. His co-star, Schedeen, described that night years later. "One take, then he was gone. There were no goodbyes," she said. Rewind. Max Wright was not a sitcom dad. His real name was George Edward Wright. He was a stage actor, a serious one. Broadway debut 1968, The Great White Hope. He shared that stage with James Earl Jones. He performed opposite Al Pacino in Richard III. On screen, he appeared in Bob Fosse's All That Jazz and Warren Beatty's Reds. In 1998, he earned a Tony nomination for his role in Ivanov. That was Chekhov, adapted by David Hare. 3 decades on Broadway. That was the career Max Wright had built. Then came ALF. Producer Tom Patchett, who had worked with Wright on the short-lived sitcom Buffalo Bill, cast him as Willie Tanner. A trained classical actor standing beside a hand puppet that got all the best lines. Wright said it plainly in a 2000 interview. It was hard work and very grim. He was, in his own words, hugely eager to have it over with. You already heard about the trapdoors, the marathon shoot days. For Wright, those were not trivia. They were 4 years of his life. After Alf Wright stayed in television, he played Norm Macdonald's boss on The Norm Show. He turned up on Friends as the manager of Central Perk. But the quote that matters most came years later. The same man who walked off that set without a word said this: It doesn't matter what I felt or what the days were like. ALF brought people a lot of joy. In 1995, Wright was diagnosed with lymphoma. He went into remission. The disease returned years later. Max Wright left us on June 26, 2019, 75 years old. 30 years on Broadway, a Tony nomination, and the world remembers him for the job he liked the least. But he gave it that final word of grace, and that word mattered. 4 people sat on that couch in 1986. The man who walked away without a word, the boy who joined the Navy, the daughter who chose silence. That leaves one, the woman who held them all together. What happens when the person who held a family together is gone? Luann Ruth Schedeen grew up on a farm outside Portland, Oregon. She described herself as a painfully shy child, the kind who hid under the dining room table just to listen to adults talk. Her mother enrolled her in acting classes, not to build a career, to help her daughter be less afraid of the world. It worked. Schedeen studied at Portland State, moved to New York, and waited. She sold clothes, she modeled shoes, she did summer stock. When Universal Pictures finally signed her, she had big plans. Take fencing lessons, drive a small Thunderbird, and sit by the swimming pool. Instead, she landed a recurring role on Marcus Welby, MD. Through the 70s and early 80s, she kept building. Emergency, Three's Company, Paper Dolls, a guest spot on Cheers. Each one a step forward, none of them the part. Then she read a script about a family who lived with a puppet. That little alien made me laugh. She took the role, and for 4 seasons, she was Kate Tanner. The warm, exasperated heart of a household held together by patience and margaritas. The woman standing between a 3-foot alien and the family cat. She later called it a technical nightmare. No joy on the set, she said. The cast a big, dysfunctional family, but she chose ALF because it made her laugh. And that contradiction between the nightmare and the laughter is the truest thing anyone ever said about this show. Most actors look for the next part. Schedeen stopped looking. A handful of roles followed, Perry Mason, Judging Amy, and then quiet. She had married talent agent Christopher Barrett in 1982. Their daughter Taylor was born in 1989. And this next part always makes fans smile. Her pregnancy was written into the show. But on screen, Kate Tanner gave birth to a son named Eric, not a daughter. After Hollywood's Schedeen picked up a paintbrush, she sculpted. She made jewelry by hand. She hunted through thrift stores for hidden treasures. The woman who once called the ALF set a nightmare spent her later years creating beautiful things with her hands. On June 14, 2026, Ann Schedeen passed peacefully. She was 77. Her family posted a tribute that sounded exactly like her. Specific, funny, and completely unfiltered. They wrote about her artwork, her belly laughter, her handmade jewelry, her oil paintings and sculptures, her rescue dogs, Rue and Red. She was a force, they said. It is unimaginable to think about life without her in it. They asked the world to donate to Habitat for Humanity instead of sending flowers, and they asked for one more thing: raise a margarita in her honor. Ann Schedeen had a phrase she repeated to the people she loved: "I'm always with you." Her family said she was right. Of the 9 people in this countdown, 6 have left us. Michu, John, Liz, Benji, Max, and just days ago, Anne. They gave us 4 seasons, 101 episodes, and a family from Melmac we never forgot. If you watched ALF on Monday nights, you were part of this family too. Tell us in the comments whose story stayed with you today. We read every single one. Hit like if this brought something back, and if you are new here, subscribe, because the shows you grew up with deserve to be remembered. Right. Ann Schedeen's family asked the world to raise a margarita in her honor. Consider this one raised.